Welcome in. It is yet another NFL preview here on Sports by the Book. I'm Jeff Parles. She's Alex White. And today we go to Green Bay, Wisconsin. The Packers are up here today. Back-to-back playoff appearances in the Jordan Love era. Of course, last year, the 7 seed, they fall to Philadelphia in the wild card weekend. So actually a round shorter than a year ago, than the previous year. Of course, they upset Dallas in that first round. But here you go, Alex. A lot of expectations again for LaFleur and company up in Green Bay.
And really, Matt LaFleur has proven himself to be an excellent head coach. I mean, at first it was a lot of talk about whether it was Aaron Rodgers or not. And now we've seen him, as you mentioned, make it to the playoffs 2 years in a row with Jordan Love. The first year, the offense was awesome and the defense really struggled. Well, last year it kind of flipped and the defense really stepped up under new defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley there. So now they're just waiting for a year where they can put it together. Of course, Jordan Love had some injury issues last year, so we'll see. It's a tough division, as we know, and right off the bat, the Packers get the Detroit Lions. They'll host them. They are a small favorite, but luckily for the jackpot card that's here at the South Point, you just pick the winners, right? $5, enter as many as you want for a chance to win $25,000, but it's going to be interesting. This is a division, of course, we know, 8.5 to 10.5, 4 teams all right there with their win total expectations.
A third place finish a year ago for Green Bay. They get the second highest projected win total going into the year, sitting at 9.5 on the Packers. Again, Minnesota's at 9, Chicago's at 8.5, Detroit's at 10.5. Of course, watch the other team previews, Minnesota, Chicago, and Detroit, to see what we think about those teams. But the Packers, minus 135 to make the postseason yet again, plus 220 to win the division, 9-1 to win the NFC, and then 20-1 to lift the Lombardi for the first time since Aaron Rodgers and company did it in the 2010 season. Of course, the Super Bowl down at the Jerry Dome against the Pittsburgh Steelers back in the day. But, you know, it just, this division is loaded, Alex, for both of us, and just the win total's telling. It is the best division in the National Football League by the win totals, and for our projections, it is the best in the NFC by margin.
I do think it's going to be very competitive. I will just say, though, and I'm surprised to be saying this because I really pushed back the last couple of years of people hyping up Green Bay to, make it all the way to the Super Bowl in this Jordan Love era. I thought everybody was jumping on board a little bit too soon. And now everybody's totally backed off of Green Bay. Not much chatter about them. It's been all about Chicago and their new head coach there in Ben Johnson. And then Minnesota, what can they do with J.J. McCarthy after such a high year last year with Sam Darnold? I think it's a buy low spot here on Green Bay. If you look at their schedule, I really think it's pretty doable, especially right out of the gate. And I think they can get started. That first game is going to be very tough against the Lions. But going down the list after that, I do think that they have some winnable games at the top. I think they could start 4-2, maybe 5-1 if they are. Everything does fall into place. But yeah, kind of a buy low here on a team that's been hyped up a lot the last couple years.
So you look at Green Bay's schedule on your screen, early bye week again. I've said this on other teams' episodes that have had early buys. Not a fan. Don't love the fact that it's 13 consecutive games to end the season. And then, look, unless if you get the number 1 seed, if Green Bay is going to make a Super Bowl, they're going to play 16 consecutive weeks. That is a lot to ask. Now, they're a little bit better off than some of these other teams with early buys, just because there is some youth on this team now. We'll get to the veterans in a second, especially the guy who's going to be toting the ball the most from the backfield yet again. But again, week 1, that is a humongous game right out of the chute. Of course, remember the Lions went to Lambeau last year and played what was a brutally ugly game in the rain early in the season. Goff didn't even play well, but the Packers were so bad in that game that it didn't even matter. Remember, that was Love coming off of the injury early in the season. And if you're Green Bay, if you're going to be a legitimate threat, and I don't want to overreact to week 1 because it's such a different animal now than it has been in the past because of the way teams manage the preseason differently now, even though we're starting to see some teams manage it a little more old school now with guys actually playing. if it feels like you got to win that game week 1 against Detroit, because then you get Washington on a short week. Yes, you get the game at home. You're playing 2 high-end playoff teams from a year ago, right out of the chute. The road games aren't overly intimidating. Green Bay should be able to go to Dallas and win in week 4. If they don't win at Cleveland week 3, that's a big problem. Cincinnati week 6, again, it's interesting. The hard games early are at home. So
exactly.
It makes it's a little more advantageous to get the harder games at home. But look, then you got to handle your road games against the weaker opponents, and you got to find a way to beat the better teams in your own building. But after that week 10 game against Philadelphia, yes, I understand that well, actually, I'm going to go a little further down, actually, not week 10, because you get the Giants week 11, a game you should win. But this is a backloaded divisional schedule. With week 12 through week 18, you get 5 divisional games. And the non-divisional games are against AFC playoff teams from a year ago at Denver and Baltimore. That is a brutal stretch any way you slice it. So I guess you could technically go up to week 10 starting in Philadelphia, where you're playing the NFC North, the defending champions, and 2 AFC playoff teams from a year ago mixed in with the Giants, who are better than the record will likely show. And Green Bay has historically struggled against the Giants, as we know. You got to get fat and happy early if you're Green Bay, and you mentioned it, Alex. So it could be a key of getting off through those first 8 games, 6-2, 5-3, to build up a record that, look, if you go 500 or if you struggle in those games, you at least give yourself an out to potentially still make the playoffs.
And that is my prediction here for the Green Bay Packers going into 2025. I do have them with 10 wins, 10-7, but you're right, fat and happy at the beginning. I do have them going 5-2 in the first 7 there. So, but that is with splitting their games with Minnesota and Chicago and getting swept by the Lions, which they may split with the Lions. Like you said, that first game right off the bat, they get to host them and can really, make their statement in week 1. So I still had a little wiggle room where I think they could get another one here or there. But I mean, we've talked about it, crossing with the NFC East and the AFC North could be good, could be bad, depending on how the Cowboys and the Giants actually pan out. Good rosters, brutal schedules for them having to go against this division here. But again, kind of a buy low. Now, the main thing, we'll start right with the offense there. And it's Jordan Love, who missed a couple games last year, had an MCL sprain, kept him out of a couple games, and really hurt his mobility coming back throughout the season. He's healthy again. I like what I saw, especially 2023, and you brought it up. I mean, they destroyed the Cowboys in the playoffs at AT&T and then almost beat the Niners. So I think a full season, if he is healthy, this could be a sneaky team. I like them to make it to the playoffs as well, which is a favorite. But yeah, a lot goes down to the health of Jordan Love, of course.
So we look at the offense as a whole. Again, Love's 25-1 to win the MVP right now. 30+ touchdown passes, plus 210. And you just hit on it, Alex. It's all about the health of Jordan Love, because that week 1 injury really set the tone for the whole year, where we saw Love be able to move out of the pocket. And Green Bay's offensive line has always been looked at as a good to high-end O-line, which they should be a good offensive line. Again, they're moving Jenkins over to center. They brought in Aaron Banks from San Francisco, who had mixed results last year with the Niners. But you're looking at a scenario here where you have a top 10 to 12 offensive line in my book for Green Bay. But the mobility of Jordan Love is going to be important. And the way they built their receiving room, as we know, there's no true, hey, you look at this guy and he's your true number 1. They have a good collection of guys where it's interchangeable 1 through 4, realistically speaking, between Dobbs, Romeo Dobbs, Jaden Reed. Obviously, Watkins is coming off a significant injury again. Dontavian Wicks is there. They brought in McCole Hardman, the veteran. And, of course, they finally drafted a receiver in the first round with Tegu Golden, the speedster out of Texas, at the back end of round 1 in, of course, the draft at Lambeau Field this past April. But, again, this is an offense with plenty of talent. Tucker Kraft also has shown the ability to be a top-flight fantasy tight end as well. And then it goes back to the running back position, right, where Josh Jacobs was the bell cow a year ago, and The only thing that scares me with Jacobs, as always, is when you get a running back who is aging, how much is left really in the tank? How much is left in the tank on Jacobs? And you look at him, he's 20-1 to have the most rushing yards in the NFL this season. And for Jacobs, a guy who, you look at it, it's only 27, but you got to treat a 27-year-old running back as a little bit different than a different position, as we know. And been in the league since 2019, getting up there. Usually the running backs can hit their expiration date around year 6, year 7. Derrick Henry's a special breed, right? So that is always a concern, even though I expect Jacobs to have another 1,000-yard rushing season here this year.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about Josh Jacobs. We didn't see him decline last year, 6th in the NFL in rushing yards. And, they do have some guys behind him in Wilson and Brooks that can step in and take some snaps. And they are pretty high on Marshawn Lloyd, who is coming off an injury. We didn't get to see much of him last year at all. So running back position, I think, is okay. I like their split with run pass for their offense. And that they do have a good O-line and they do have a good offense here. Looking at the yards per attempt, I mean, Jordan Love, looking at guys at 3,000 yards or more last year, it was Lamar Jackson, Jared Goff, Brock Purdy, Jalen Hurts, and then Jordan Love, 8 yards per attempt. What's even more impressive is when Malik Willis stepped in, they kept him right there too, 10.2 yards per attempt in his few starts there. So even with an injury, 25 touchdowns, 11 INTs, I'm sure they want to clean that up. But wide receivers, of course, that is going to be a big question mark. I do like the Matthew Golden draft pick. I do think that he can really help this offense with Reed and Dobbs and Watson. And then they also did bring in Savion Williams from TCU. So a couple young rookie wide receivers that could help this already good core. It's not the flashiest, right? They didn't do a whole lot. They are bringing back 19 of 22 returners. So it's pretty much the same team. They trust their guys. They like what they've got. They like their core. The last couple of years, we've been talking about them being one of the youngest teams. Not so much anymore. Right now, it's time to prove themselves and a lot more veterans on this team, at least with a year or two experience. But we'll see. You brought up the O-line. Do like them. So every position, pretty much, I do like on the offense, above average.
Go to the defensive side of the ball here again. You mentioned it, 19 of 22 starters returned for Green Bay, so it is not a lot of changes. One of the changes is Nate Hobbs in the secondary. Jaire Alexander, of course, dealt with a lot of injuries in his career in Green Bay, now a Baltimore Raven. So that's really the biggest change. And, for Green Bay, it's interesting with the defense. There's no guy, and you look at, this is the first page of the Defensive Player of the Year odds. There's no Green Bay Packer logo. But there's just a lot of good players on this defense. Rashawn Gary, Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, Lucas Van Ness, McKinney in the secondary. There are just a lot of high-end good players on this defense. No one elite. But again, we talked about this a lot 2 years ago, that their defense was a huge issue with the way that Joe Barry coordinated it. Mm-hmm. Last year, they were just a lot more fundamentally sound under Hafley, who came back to the NFL from college football. Of course, was the head coach of Boston College and then came back over. But in the end, this defense, I expect them to be somewhere in the same pocket as I said, the offensive line, somewhere in the 10 to 12 range. High end, if they can spike a top 8, top 6, that's the scenario where Green Bay can steal the NFC North and win the division.
Much improved last year under Hafley. 6 in total. 6 in scoring defense, 5th in total defense, 7th against the run, 13th against the pass. You brought it up, McKinney. I do think he is one of their top guys there at safety. And then, just a whole bunch of above average guys they have for their defense that I do think can keep them in games and complement their offense. So tough division, a little bit of a tougher schedule. But very high expectations for this Green Bay Packers team.
Well, and again, for Green Bay this year, it as you just said, this is I don't want to say it's a make or break year because Love's got the long contract. Well, they're not. They took forever to get rid of McCarthy when it wasn't working. LaFleur is not even remotely close to the hot seat, even if they had an underachieving season. But this is a Green Bay team that, if you look at this division, where there are conflicting opinions out there on all these teams. There are people that are super high on Chicago. There are people that are super high on Minnesota. People still like the Lions, even with the change of coordinators behind Campbell. I haven't heard a lot of Green Bay noise this offseason, which is very different than last year, where all we heard was Green Bay noise going into the season. And that may work in Green Bay's favor.
Yep.
So in the end, Alex, I have Green Bay at 9-8, but I actually see the path to win 10, 11 games here a lot more than I see the negative path for Green Bay. It all comes down to Jordan Love's health. If Jordan Love stays healthy, there's no excuse for the Packers. You got to be in the postseason, and you got to win a game. You got to at least get as far as you did 2 years ago when they had the ball late with a chance to win the game in San Francisco against the Niners, a team that ended up in the Super Bowl and almost won the thing. So that's, for me, I have Green Bay at 9-8. Yeah, I understand it's under on the win total, but I see the path to go over win 10, 11 games more so than I see a bottoming out, Alex.
I completely agree with everything that we just said, all the factors there, offensive and defensively. And 30-plus touchdowns right there for Jordan Love is pretty tempting. Plus 210, had 25 last year. And we brought up the wide receiver additions that they made. And then you brought up Tucker Kraft, who is really good. And we forgot to bring up Musgrave, which we haven't really got to see both of them on the field at the same time. So 2 tight ends that they were drafted in the same year. We want to see what we can get from both of those guys. Josh Jacobs is back. Yeah, very tempting. Even that Matthew Golden. What do you think about that for Offensive Rookie of the Year?
Yeah, I don't see it. I don't. The offensive rookie is, we've hinted at this in other previews. It's Cam Ward's award to me, at least for me. It's his award because even though Genty's the favorite, the quarterback starting week 1 is such a huge advantage.
Right.
Also playing in a weak division, maybe the Titans pop a random 9-8. That might be good enough to win the AFC South.
Yeah.
Then Cam Ward is going to run away and hide. And we also hinted at this in some AFC West previews. Omarion Hampton, RJ Harvey, and Ashton Genty are all going to be all have the potential to be the number 1 backs. Genty, we know, will be the number 1 back in Vegas. I think there's a lot to climb for Golden in a crowded, no elite guys in this Green Bay wide receiver room, but it is a crowded wide receiver room at that here in Green Bay. All right, I think both of us like the Packers this year, even though, again, I have them under the win total technically, but the path for being an elite team, I think, is much more there than some of these other teams that I like under, again, just on the virtue of it being a high win total on Green Bay. And you think they're capable of winning double-digit games yet again up at Lambeau Field. All right, that's what we got for you. That's been the Green Bay Packer preview here on Sports by the Book. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We are live Monday through Friday at 10 a.m., giving you the best in sports betting every single day. Make sure you subscribe to the South Point Studio channel as well. All 32 teams will be up on the channel soon, so be on the lookout here as we continue through getting you ready for week 1 in the National Football League. She's Alex White. I'm Jeff Parles. We'll see you next time. This has been another NFL team preview. The Green Bay Packers this time here on Sports by the Book.